Okay, for problem number 1, it says, what is the sum of all integers n that satisfy this inequality? First of all, I see there's a sine function as an argument, and they want it between 1/3 and 1/4. And I know the sign bounces back and forth between plus or minus 1. So first thing is go to whiteboard and try to figure out what they're asking for, all right? So let's write this down. So I know n is an integer. And then they give me this over here, 1/4. And I got less than, and it's going to be pi over n now. And then I get 1/3, all right? The first thing I do is I got to determine what the n's are, all right? And now looking at this over here, if you look at pi over n, and n again is an integer, what would you have? You'd have a possibility over here. I want to point out, I do know that n can't be 0, but n could be any integer in the universe. And of course, what would this range between? Now thinking about it, the most it could be is pi. That's when n equals 1. The least it could be is minus pi, and that's when n equals minus 1. Now what happens in between here? In between here, the numbers are going to be, let's see, if you took 2, it'd be pi over 2, so forth and so on. So I'm going to say it's in between, so over here. Then the next question is, by the way, these are the other n's over here, so all other n's. Again, n can't be 0. So what does the sine function look like between that? Let's take a look at that. The sine function is going to look like this between those two numbers. It's going to look, this is going to be minus pi over here, and that's pi over there. Now, I know it has to be between 1/3 and 1/4, so I'm going to say those negative n's are out of the question. So n must be greater than 0. All right? But I want this sine function, and what I mean by that, the sine of pi over n, to be between 1/3 and 1/4. So 1/3's up here about, and 1/4's down here about. All right? So we got some problems, and what I'm going to do is, since I'm dealing with n greater than 0, I might as well start looking at n's, by the way. And so what n would you look at first? I'll start at 1, then I'll go to 2, then go to 3, 4, so forth and so on. And as you do that, I hope they're going to be easy to evaluate. So let's write this down. So if n is equal to 1, what would that give me? That would give me the sine of pi. Well, that's easy to do. That's just 0. And that's out of the question, by the way, because 0 is not between 1/4 and 1/3. So this one's out of the question. Let's do n equals 2 now. And what do you get there? You get the sine of pi over 2. And that's also easy to do. That's just the number 1. And the number 1 is not between 1/4 and 1/3. So this is out of the question. All right? Then what I do, I go to 3 now. And you can get the sine of pi over 3. It's a little more challenging for me, but I do recognize that as being the sine of 60 degrees. And the sine of 60 degrees is going to be root 3 over 2. Now, root 3 over 2, looking at it, I'm going to say that's greater than the 1/3. So this is out of the question. All right, by the way, looking at this is 3 root 3's greater than 2. And certainly I know root 3 is greater than 1, and 3 something greater than 1 is certainly greater than 2. So that's out of the question. All right, let's go to the next one, and it's going to be n equals 4. Let's see what happens there. Might be a little easier to do now. It's going to be sine. It's going to be pi over 4. That's a sine of 45 degrees, by the way. By the way, let me get my eraser out. I want to erase some things I don't need anymore. Erase this stuff over here. Actually, I should never erase that. This is root 3 over 2, which is greater than 1/3. Yep, about 1/3. Which is going to be, this is 1 over root 2, and that's pi over 4. I'm going to still say it's greater than 1/3. Again, thinking about it, this is 3 greater than root 2, and root 2 is 1 point something, and 3 is greater than 1 point something. I get my eraser out, and this is out of the question now. Whoops. Out of the question. Let's go to n equals 5, by the way. A little more challenging. And what I mean by that, I don't think I can evaluate that directly, but I can say the sine of pi over 5. And my claim over here, I'm going to have to start thinking about it. And what I mean by that, when you look at the sine function looks like this over here. And by the way, when you get close to 0, this thing starts to look like a line, y equals x. So I'm going to say the sine function, the sine of x sort of looks just like x when we're near 0. All right, near 0. So I'm going to say this thing is near pi over 5. All right, so it's near that. Now looking at that, I'm still saying it's greater than 1/3. All right, and again, 3 times pi is about 9, and 5 times 1 is about 5. So this is out of the question. I got to keep going, don't I? Go to n equals 6, and that's going to be sine pi over 6. And again, I'm going to say this is near pi over 6. Again, we're not using a calculator. And looking at that, pi over 6, I'm still going to say it's greater than 1/3. All right, got 3 times pi is roughly 3. That'd be 9. So this is out of the question. All right, let's go to 7. I know it seems tedious to do this, but we're just thinking through it. I haven't had a successful n yet, have I? So I'm going to get n over 7. Pi over 7, I mean. This is roughly pi over 7. Again, I'm going to say that's greater than 1/3. All right? I'm getting sort of close to it, though. I'll tell you why. 3 times pi is 9, and 7 times 1 is 7. So 9 greater than 7. I'm getting pretty close. I'll cross this out. Let's go to n equals 8. That's going to be sine pi over 8. And I'm going to say this is roughly pi over 8 and 1/3. Well, again, I'm still saying it's greater than, 3 times pi is, we're getting close, though. It's 9, and roughly 9, and then 8, right? So that inequality is okay. Let's go to 9 now. And what do you get there? The sine pi over 9. And again, that's roughly pi over 9. And I'm going to say it's greater than 1/3 again. And the reason that, pi roughly 3, but it's bigger than 3, and so it'll be bigger than 9, and 9 is bigger than 9. So it's out of the question. Let's go to 10. And I think we might get our first success now. Roughly speaking, this is pi over 10. I'm going to say pi over 10 is less than 1/3 now. This is a success number. And looking at this, what do you get? 3 times pi, roughly 9 point something, and certainly 10 is greater than that number. So this is good. Let's go to 11. And again, to look at that, you write down sine pi over 11. Roughly speaking, this is going to be pi over 11. I can say if you remember that, they're certainly going to be less than 1/3. All right? Now, if they're, I know it's less than 1/3, but my concern now is it going to be above the quarter? Right? So really my concern is pi over 11 above 1/4? I'm sorry, 1/3. Well, looking at it, I'm going to say 4 times pi is roughly 12, and 12 is greater than 11. So this is not a success then. Let's go to n equals 12 now. We get their sine pi over 12. And that's going to be roughly pi over 12. And again, I know that's less than 1/3. They'll always be less than 1/3 now. Right? My big concern is pi over 12. Is that greater than 1/4? And I'm looking at this thing, and I'm going to say success again, because 4 times pi is greater than 3. That'll be greater than 12. That looks good. Let's go to 13. And what do you get there? Sine pi over 13. And again, this is roughly pi over 13. Again, I know it's less than 1/3. That's a given, all right? But I'm kind of wondering, is pi over 13 greater than 1/4? Well, looking at that, 4 times pi, pi is a little bit bigger than 3, so it's going to be bigger than 12, and 12 is not bigger than 1/4, so this is a failure. And by the way, here on out, they're all going to be failures. So I got successes. With successes, these numbers over here. Now I got to go back and read the question again, because I really can't remember what the question is. And I gotta read, it says, what is the sum of all integers n that satisfy this? Well, there's only 3 integers that satisfy it, and where those 3 integers are gonna be, those 3 integers are gonna be 10, 11, and 12. So I take 10, 11, and 12, and add those 3 numbers together, we can get 33. And we're done. Thank you.